Patrick Graham. Program specialist working the Zoom room is Nicole Tenner. And next to her is Joanne Morelli of the Middletown Park and Rec staff. Okay? I'm going to let Toby introduce his team from Simone Collins because I don't want to steal his thunder. It's really their gig. One quick note, if you have to go to the restroom, basically behind the wall. So just walk out there, men's and ladies room, feel free, okay? We want you to be interactive here. Don't be afraid to go all Jerry Springer on us. You know, it's all good, man. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce Toby from Simone Collins.
Thank you, everyone, and thank you for joining us tonight for this second public meeting and the comprehensive, let's see if I can get all these letters right, the Parks, Recreation, Open Space, Greenways, and Trails Plan for Middletown Township here. I think I got all the letters there. Got a nice full agenda, but not to keep you too late tonight. We're going to be starting out with just an introductions where I'm going to introduce our team and the project schedule overall. As I mentioned, this is the second of 4 public meetings that we'll be having. Then we're going to give you an update on what we've heard from the public participation efforts that we've had so far. Those are the first public meeting, our online public survey, and then some key person interviews that we've been conducting. Then I'm going to cover some analysis that we've been doing, some of the analysis that's led us to where we are in the process now. And then we're going to introduce 4 initial concepts that we've come up with based on what we've heard in the public meetings and the analysis we've been doing. And those we'll discuss all 4 of those initial concepts for this report in some depth, and then we will be breaking out into breakout sessions so we can have these conversations on a little smaller scale, which we're hoping to give everyone a chance to really hear from their neighbors and share with their neighbors. So we'll be splitting up into 3 groups, and there will be an online breakout session as well. All right. As I mentioned, my name is Toby Levin, and I'm a landscape architect with Simone Collins, the team behind this planning effort. I'm joined tonight by my colleague and our principal, Bill Collins, in the corner back there, and by Derek Derica, who is our Parks and Rec professional. And I also just want to take a moment to congratulate the Parks and Rec team here on getting the Excellence in Rec and Parks Award for the Teen Talent Show from the PA Rec and Parks Society last week, just earlier this week, last week. It's a great recognition of their hard work. As I mentioned, this is the second public meeting. We have another committee meeting coming up next week, and then our next public meeting after tonight will be May 15th. I'll be reminding you of that many times, so don't forget. And then, yes, so we've been, as part of this report process, we really want to hear from you all what it is that you see that you appreciate about your parks, where it is that you see that there's more work that needs to go in, and really this is about taking your ideas and making them into a plan for the next 15 to 20 years. So that's really what our public participation has been about so far. This is our second public meeting. Our first public meeting, some key takeaways that we heard from you all. Connectivity is important, both between existing parks and trails and between neighborhoods within Middletown. Several years ago, there was the multimodal improvement plan, which really was about making connectivity, making connections between neighborhoods and parks and various destinations. And that's really, that plan and those efforts have really risen to the top in a lot of conversations we've been having with you all. Additionally, those top priorities for connections include Core Creek Park, no surprise, being the biggest recreation area in the community. Also Middletown Community Park, and connections between the east and west sides of the township, really through the boroughs, which dissect the township here. Additionally, one of our other takeaways, restrooms are needed as we look to encourage use of existing parks even more. Access to natural areas has also been something we've heard a lot of people want, and that's natural areas and open spaces really are a high priority for the community here. Maintenance of the riparian buffers. I think we all know that this is that a lot of the parks here in Middletown are built around the waterways within the community, and really maintaining those riparian buffers, both for ecological health of that ecosystem that is the creeks, but also to allow for access to those creeks, because we all know how tempting it is to be in the water and really get to fish or interact with the water. So there is a balance between keeping those riparian buffers healthy and providing access so that people can really enjoy the resources that exist where you all live. Additionally, we have heard that playgrounds need to be upgraded, and that includes the addition of sensory-friendly play equipment as well as accessible play. Other desired amenities we've heard people ask about are turf and/or lit fields to expand the usage of those fields into other conditions, a public pool, and additional pickleball courts. I'm sure that's no surprise. Also, we've heard a number of requests for an amphitheater or band shell sort of structure within the community. As I mentioned, we've also been doing a number of key person interviews with various stakeholders within the park system. That includes the Parks and Rec Department staff and other staff that work with the parks in your community. That also includes emergency responders, agencies from the county who are very, very involved here in the township. We spoke with Steyer's Orchard and the Heritage Conservancy and a number of other interested groups within the community, as you can see on these slides. We're also conducting a public opinion survey. So far, as of this morning, we had 1,094 responses. I think when I left the office, we were up to 1,109. So responses are continuing to pour in, which is great to see. We really want to be, that's a really good way for us to be able to capture the breadth of voices that exist in your community. So if you haven't participated in the survey yet, please do. And if you have, please tell all your friends and neighbors that they should participate too. From those responses, about 90% of respondents live in Middletown. The remaining 10% come from the surrounding boroughs and surrounding townships like Falls and Bristol, Lower Makefield, and Lower Southampton. And there has been a small number of former residents who have dispersed into far and wide, but are still very much in touch with their home community here in Middletown. Of the respondents, more than half have lived in the community for more than 20 years. So there really is a long investment in this community from a lot of the people who are giving responses to the survey. And a significant number of the households include residents who are under 25. We've seen a really good broad distribution of ages in our respondents, but it is always good to see that there are young people's voices being included as well. One of the questions we asked is how frequently people visit the parks in Middletown. About 33% report that they go to the parks several days a week, and more than 85% report that they visit the parks in Middletown at least once a month. So really we're seeing a lot of people who are really invested in their parks and really use the parks responding, which is what we want to see. We want to know what park users want from the parks. We also have asked one of the questions we asked is, are there an adequate number of parks and open spaces and natural areas and trails near where you live? And 2/3 of people responded that yes, there are, which is really good a good indication that people are pretty satisfied, which is another takeaway we've had across all of our public engagement, is that by and large, people are very pleased with the park system here in Middletown. Which doesn't mean that there's not room for improvement, but it does mean that you've got a good base right there. People were asked what their favorite type of open space features are. Tied for first with a little over 33% were both natural features and passive features like trails and benches and picnic facilities. Next up was active features like sports courts and fields. And then playgrounds at a little over 10%, and then the all-encompassing other, which includes golf and disc golf, tennis courts, the bike trails, and the nature in the parks as well. And when asked how people travel to the parks, almost 50% reported that they walk to parks, which is really quite a high number of people who are walking to parks, which is great to see. 20% are biking, but also 87% of people report that they drive to parks. I mean, that's something that we've seen that while we always want that to be an option because, you know, sometimes the car is the only way to get to places. We really have seen a desire for more people who want to be able to walk and bike to their parks as an option. So that really feeds into this idea of connectivity and access. Another important question we asked is what's missing from the park system? Number one most reported feature was trails, sidewalks, and pathways in parks and bike lanes and biking paths. That about 33% of respondents included some form of walking or trails in their response about what's missing. Another popular feature that people reported missing is bathrooms, benches, and water fountains, really the things that make parks comfortable to stay in. We also saw a lot of people requested upgraded park amenities like new playground equipment and splash pads or spray pads. And then we saw after that, the percentages dropped off a little bit, but the other popular responses included pools or more pickleball courts, areas of nature or habitat, ecological areas, more open space. People also asked for more or turf fields. So again, we're seeing a lot of desire for a variety of active recreation elements in the parks. People also requested dog parks, and then a large portion of the responses also just generally fall into the broad other category. The other things that were requested include indoor facilities like the community center, security in the form of cameras or higher levels of policing, greater maintenance, and a lot of people expressed concern about ATV and four-wheeler use in the open spaces here in Middletown. We also asked what the top 3 priorities for Middletown Parks and Rec and open spaces should be over the next 3 to 5 years. And as you can see here, overwhelmingly, people reported that the development of township trail, pathway, and sidewalk system for a more walkable and bikeable community based on the multimodal improvement plan, that is overwhelmingly the top priority that people have identified for the next 3 to 5 years at 67% of responses. Other popular responses included preservation and or protection of more open space and add to or enhance existing amenities in the parks. So people really want to see more protected open spaces and really want to improve the existing parks that you already have here in Middletown. Other popular responses included environmental improvements to existing parks, offer a greater variety of community events, offer a greater variety of recreation programs, and at 17% of people requested creation of new parks altogether. And then, of course, 2% said, just keep it the way it is. It's great. And that, although that's a small number, it's still important to recognize that there are a good portion of people who are quite satisfied with the way that parks are today. And with that, I'm going to move on to some of the analysis that we've been doing. This next couple of slides they are just a portion of the analysis we've been doing in addition to the public engagement. One of the things we looked at is the amount of existing open space that you have here in Middletown. And as you can see on this slide, the National Recreation and Park Association releases some benchmark numbers where they look at what communities within specific sizes have within their communities. And these are not by any means saying that the right amount to have is what they identify. It's just reporting what is typical in a community of that size. And Middletown is right on the edge of 2 different demographic groups, the 20 to 50,000 people in the population, or the 50 to 100,000. And over the next 15 to 20 years, we are expecting Middletown to grow from being about 46,000 and being in the smaller of those 2 demographic groups to having a little over 50,000 and joining the new group. So because of that, we looked at both of those population groups to compare against. Middletown presently has just shy of 1,000 acres of parkland and open space that is owned within the township, that's owned by the township. That does not include spaces like Core Creek or Playwiki parks, because those are owned by the county and managed by the county. So those were not included in these results. If we were to include that, there would be, Core Creek alone is over 1,000 acres. So we would have, by that metric, Middletown is rich with public lands. And how that breaks down is about, for every 1,000 residents, there's about 22 acres of parkland in Middletown. And compare that to the national average for a community of this size, that's twice as much as a typical community of this size would have in the country. And when you go to compare that for the larger community that we expect Middletown to be by 2040, it's still almost twice the amount that would be in a community of that size. So I think that really speaks to the care and attention that has been paid to parks historically in the township, and really, it really, I think, shows off what a great resource you have here in the Parks Department and in your parks. We looked also at where these open spaces are, and we broke out open spaces as separate from parks because there are a lot of parks that are specifically called a park. And what open space is varies, that definition varies a lot from community to community. And one of the things we're going to be doing with the committee in our upcoming meetings is really working to hone down a definition of open space that works here in Middletown. And that could be natural areas, that could be undeveloped areas, and we'll get more into that when we get into the initial recommendations, the initial concepts for recommendations that we will come up with later in this presentation. But as you can see in this slide, there are 4 areas where open space is concentrated throughout the community, including on the northwest side to the south, kind of to the south of Core Creek, along the Neshaminy Creek. There's about 172 acres of township-owned open space in that area. There's also a lot of open space in what we're referring to as the Levittown V along Mill Creek and Queen Anne Creeks. There's a lot of preserved lands there and a lot of parks. Combined, they make over 170 acres in the Levittown portion of the township. We also looked at where the trails are in the township right now. And as you can see, there are, of course, a lot within Core Creek, a lot within that natural area. But there are a number of trails in other parks and a number of trails that link Middletown to the surrounding communities. I think we see that there is the beginnings of a robust trail system here. And what we heard in our process with the multimodal improvement plan, and again, as we've engaged with the public through this process, this parks planning process, is that those existing trails are just the beginning of what people want to see. And really, people really would like to see those trails connect to one another so you can get even farther. And so we are going to be looking for opportunities where there might be small interventions where we could connect 2 existing trail systems and create an even more robust system out of that. Similar to trails, we also looked at existing sidewalks, because if you're not on a trail and you're walking somewhere, it's probably going to be on a sidewalk. And as you can see, there are a number of neighborhoods within Middletown that are well served with sidewalks, especially along kind of the perimeter of the Levittown area. But there are also many neighborhoods within Middletown that do not have sidewalks. And in some of those areas, it may be useful to add a trail. If there's not a desire for sidewalks in that community, maybe there's a desire for a trail they can connect from their community to other communities. And there are also a number of obstacles that exist within the township, being bisected by the boroughs, by Route 1, by 295. There are a number of obstacles to connectivity within the township. And we've also looked at wetlands, as that's really one of the most valuable types of natural area that exist and really deserve a lot of attention and protection for the ecosystem services, for the stormwater services that they can provide. And the good news is that a lot of the wetlands that exist within Middletown are already within parks. You can see along the Neshaminy, in that same area that I was referring to earlier, that's kind of between Neshaminy Creek and Core Creek. There are a lot of wetlands that exist there along the Neshaminy Creek, and those are already within preserved open spaces that the township controls and manages. Also on the Sabo wetlands, kind of on the opposite side of the northern part of the township, a lot of those wetlands are already preserved thanks to the hard work of the Parks and Rec Department in acquiring those properties. But there are also a number of wetlands that exist, especially on the periphery of that wetland complex, that are not preserved at this time. And so there might be opportunities to find ways to ensure that those wetlands are maintained and can continue to serve the public and the natural world that they occupy. And so with all of that information, we're going to get into these initial concepts, and I'm going to put my notebook down because I'm going without notes. So the first of our concepts that we're introducing tonight is open space. And for our purposes tonight, we are thinking of open space as non-developed areas, and that could be forested lands, that could be undeveloped lands that aren't really forested, or maybe they're a grassland or a shrubland. That's just any space that is not developed yet, which outside of the preserved land, the lands that are already preserved by the county and by the township, there are not a lot of opportunities to preserve additional undeveloped lands because Middletown is largely developed. So one of the ideas that we want to suggest here is to improve access to and within certain open spaces, really allow the residents of Middletown and surrounding communities to get inside those open spaces and experience the natural areas that they contain, whether that's a woodland or a walk along the creek. I think a lot of people really want to see natural areas and be exposed and wrapped in these natural areas. And part of recognizing the existing open space is to really celebrate those areas as preserves. Because if I tell you that there's an open space at the end of the block, maybe that means that nobody lives in that house and it's just kind of undeveloped and uncared for. But maybe if I tell you that there's a preserve at the end of the block, that sounds like something that has value to it. So really just changing the name helps reframe how people can think about these spaces. So you could have the Langhorne Springwater Preserve, which is a really high quality forest land right in the middle of town. We have the Levittown riparian confluence of Queen Anne and Mill Creeks. We could have Mill Creek Preserve, which could expand on that trail system that already exists within there and really take advantage of that greenway that exists to build trails and connect the communities along there, where a lot of those communities, as we saw in the earlier slides, don't have sidewalks. So a trail system there really does create that connection in an area that does not currently have connection to the neighboring communities. And the same in Queen Anne, in the Queen Anne Creek Preserve, where we could really work on improving the connections between and across the creeks there between Cobalt Ridge and Quincy Hollow Parks. And then we also saw in that space that I've now mentioned, this is the third time, along the Neshaminy, that space could really be celebrated as the Neshaminy Creek Preserve or the Neshaminy Preserve. So that's kind of our first idea on how to think about open space moving into the future. Another concept, as I mentioned before, is working to improve pedestrian and bike connections to parks. And this multimodal improvement plan that came out, I believe, in 2023, that was also a Simone Collins project. That was our first time getting to work in the community here in Middletown. That really laid the groundwork and created the plan for how to improve connectivity for both pedestrian and bicycle connectivity throughout the township. And that is connections not only to parks, but also to other destinations within the community, like the Woodbourne train station, and to the surrounding communities as well. There are, obviously a number of parks that where there could be improved connections. Those include on the west side of town, the Christopher Jones Memorial Park, the Corporal Harry J. Simmons Jr. Memorial Park, and the Firefighters Park. In the north part of town, we've got Core Creek. Obviously, there's a lot of opportunities for new connections to Core Creek, which, anytime you have a space as popular as Core Creek is, which we've seen from all of our public engagement efforts, is really a great resource that the community takes advantage of. Imagine if you could walk there every day. Other areas in the northern part of the township include Middletown Community Park and Steyer's Orchard. And on the south side, we've seen Forsythia Crossing and Veterans Memorial Park. There's great opportunities for connection there along Mill Creek, as I mentioned. Also at Cobalt Ridge and Upper Orchard and Quincy Hollow on the south side. But we also know that these are not all of the connections that are missing. So one of the things we're looking to hear more about from you over the course of this evening is where are other missing connections that exist in town? And that could be to parks, or it could be to other destinations that you want to be able to walk and bike to. It's not limited to parks by any means. Right, and now we're going to move on to park facility improvements. And for this section and the next, I'm going to pass it off to Derek Derica, our Certified Parks and Rec Specialist.
Thank you, Toby. You can give Toby a round of applause. I heard a couple claps. That was a lot of slides he went through. So again, my name is Derek Derica. I'm the Certified Park and Rec Professional. That sounds like this grandiose thing, but basically DCNR, who's the 50% funder of the grant that is helping fund this, is a requirement that there's a Certified Park and Rec Professional. My primary role with that, we have a great planning team. with Simone Collins, and there's great staff already here. My job is to make sure that the planners, landscape architects, and others don't get too far ahead of themselves, and to make sure and ensure that we can do what a lot of the things that are in the plan, either with existing staff or how do we do that within the budget and operation. The other thing that I'm doing is I'm engaging with existing department staff, talk about what's working right now, what's not working, what are future challenges, and what are future opportunities available as well, and really just to hear and listen. So in my day job, I work at Upper Dublin Township, and I'm the director there, and I've been there for 20 years. So a lot of similarities in terms of the community and demographics, but Middletown is own unique community. So I'm actually in the middle right now of discussions with the parks or the recreation staff, as well as the public works staff that services the parks. Before we even talk about the concepts, I just want to say that they're doing a very good job. They're doing an excellent job. The parks are very well maintained. The recreation staff continues to grow in terms of its offerings to the community. And the special events that are put on for all of you are really top-notch, high-class events that they're putting on. And it's great that you're supporting them as well, coming to those programs and events, because that just encourages them to do more and more for all of you. So we're really in the infancy stages when it comes to initial concepts. But when we look at the park facility improvements, one thing that Paul kind of said to me, the basic motto when it comes to the parks is maintaining a really clean, safe, and ready to use. That is the motto and theme that park staff or the public works staff has when they're going in to maintain these parks. That's the base level of service and the base level of expectation that every resident should have when going into a Middletown park. I don't really think that's something we need to change. But if we add more trails, and if we add more open space, and if we add additional amenities at your parks, that's the baseline that we want to make sure that meets your expectations as the park visitors and those that come in from outside communities as well, that we're meeting that base level. One of the other challenges is as we do these capital improvements, we need to find ways to have consistent funding. Right now, there is a fund that the Parks and Recreation Department is pulling from as they're doing capital projects, but that's not forever. That's not a forever fund. So finding other ways without increasing taxes dramatically, obviously is important. Also challenging, though, staff to make sure that they're going out for grants. The staff here and the contractor that you work with has done a great job of finding and then securing grants to do a lot of the capital improvements, and you want to continue to see that. But sometimes you do need matching funds, and that's just part of it. It could be anywhere from 50 or anywhere from 20 to 50% matching funds. So that's something we need to make sure that there's a consistent funding source to make sure that these projects not only, not only are funded, but also are implemented correctly and to really your expectations. We want to make sure that we guarantee access for everybody, but also enjoyment. It's one thing to get someone into a park, but we want to make sure that everybody can utilize the amenities that are in there as well. And I'll say that you're doing a good job doing that, but I think we want to get Middletown to a great job of doing that. And that's really a challenge that we'll be working with staff and Public Works on, okay, what parks really need that extra oomph, that extra push to make sure that not only can people get in, but once they're in, it's equitable in terms of the enjoyment that can be had by all. Making sure that when we look at fee schedules, so this is rentals, your fields, your buildings, things like that, that it's market rate, that you're getting what's expected, and not only are you covering utility costs and staff costs that are associated with that, but you're making a little bit as well. Because that goes to support other things that the Parks and Recreation Department are doing. So that'll be something that we work with staff on, just making sure. I know that staff did recent updates to their fee schedule when it comes to some of the rentals. We want to make sure that preference is given from a financial standpoint as well as scheduling standpoint to obviously to resident and resident groups. But also, you have great facilities. So when it's available for non-resident groups to use or other groups to use, find ways to charge them and make money on those utilities, those facilities, and make sure that you're covering all your expenses. And the biggest thing is, typically in a municipal setting, in a Parks and Recreation setting, your average age of employee is 54 to 57 years old. Well-seasoned employees, I like to say. But it's really important to note that they've been talking about that kind of baby boomer and the next group kind of working their way out, and we're getting closer and closer there. Your staff has incredible institutional knowledge of your park system and your recreation system, but they're going to retire at some point in time. So we want to make sure that we're planning for success when we're doing successional planning. So making sure we're documenting, memorializing everything that's in the head of every public works employee who works in your park system, and with your recreation staff, making sure that the processes and how they go about securing sponsors, special events, is memorialized, because we don't want to lose that when they leave. They've done such a great job doing that. So that is really where my focus will be, is encouraging that. My job is not going to be to make sure that everything gets written down, but to provide the kind of the framework in order for staff to start doing that. And we've already started having some of that conversations already. And then when it comes to programming, so programming really is your recreation division doing programs, events, discount tickets that I know is popular in the community as well. So really, when we look at that, 3 initial concepts that have come from the interviews that we've done so far is your staff is doing a great job slowly and methodically really building the programming offering that's in the community. Too much too fast, you're going to end up seeing a high cancellation rate, as well as, and you don't want to see too high of a cancellation rate, but cancellations every now and then are good, because that means they're trying something new. We want to make sure that it's good for your facilities. I was speaking with a yoga instructor today, and she has 40 people that do the yoga program at any one time. That's a lot of people. That's a lot of yogis in one space. Could we take more? You probably could actually take more, but your facility doesn't allow for it. So we want to make sure that it's measured growth and that you're not creating negativity because you're so big, but you don't have the facilities in order to house them. We want to make sure, just like when we talked about access to parks, we want to make sure that we eliminate any barriers for participation. That could be physical, a way for people to get to the program, but that also could be financial. So we want to make sure that recreation is truly for all in Middletown. That could be through scholarship program. We have the community foundation as well, so maybe helping beef up the fundraising with that to make sure that anybody, this is not just children, but also adults that might be experiencing one-time hardship or are generally, categorized as more under-resourced, that everybody can participate in these programs without putting undue financial burden on the recreation division as well. And there are definitely ways and great models out there to do that. So we'll be helping with that. And then again, memorializing those processes and procedures for public information. Your staff is doing a wonderful job right now. We want to make sure we don't lose that information. So they're the general concepts that we're working on again, park facilities and the programming side. You want to talk, Kobe? Well, thank you for your attention. I don't need a round of applause.
Well, you can give it to him anyway. All right, so we've already reached the next steps portion of this presentation. We're doing well. Step number 1, take the survey if you haven't taken it yet. And if you have taken it, spread the word. This is the easiest way that people have to share their vision for the park system with us, so that we can make sure that this report and this plan accurately reflects the desires of the community. So if you have taken it, thank you. If you haven't, please do. And either way, spread the word.
That's a quick question.
Yeah.
You said you were at like 1,100 people that maybe filled out that survey.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have a target in mind of what you want to hit?
We're aiming for 2,000. Our initial goal was to get more than we had for our parks plan that we've been working on up in Upper Macungie Township, outside of Allentown. That's going to happen tomorrow. But this is also a community that's about 1.5 times the size of Upper Macungie, so we know that you guys can reach 2,000.
So even if we filled out the survey, we should pass it on to our friends and tell them that.
Exactly.
Is there a closing date to the survey?
We'll be closing it. I believe it will close in mid-May when we present the draft report.
Another survey question. If you've already filled it out and then other ideas come, there's no way to get back in and sort of update ideas?
Not within the survey, but you're welcome to shoot us an email.
Yeah, be another guy.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you're also.
Email addresses up. If you have any additional ideas, just send an email to Simone Collins.
Yeah, all of our contact information is included in this at the end of the presentation. So if you have ideas that you want to share with us, we are always happy to hear more ideas. So an email is fine, or if you want to take the survey a second time, we won't tell. Our next steps from the Simone Collins team We're going to be formalizing the vision for this plan with the committee, our committee meeting next week. We do have a steering committee from the community that's really been helping us helping to steer the process of this plan. So we're going to be formalizing the vision as well as working on some definitions of open space and other similar activities in our committee meeting next week. We're going to continue publicizing this public opinion survey that you guys are all taking. And we're going to continue the analysis and mapping that we've been working on to really get a better, as thorough of an understanding of the park system here as we can. We'll also be continuing that same analysis of the administration and programming sides of the Parks and Rec Department. We're going to be completing the key person interviews. I think we've done about 60% of them so far, so we've got about 4 left to complete. And then we're going to continue to develop these initial concepts into actual full-fledged recommendations that will be included in the report. Meetings are upcoming. As I mentioned, we have our next committee meeting is next week, and the next public meeting is May 15th. We hope to see all of you there again. We're going to be presenting some draft plans and our initial recommendations based on the feedback we're getting tonight on these initial concepts. And then there'll be our public meeting number 4 is going to be when we present the final plan, and that will be Monday, August 11th. Spread the word. We want as many people to come to all of these meetings as possible.
Are the committee meetings open but no public comment, or are they not even open to the public?
They are not open to the public at this time. But if you have an issue you would like to raise, please reach out to us, and we'll find a way to raise that to the committee. All right, and so that brings us to the breakout sessions portion of our meeting tonight. But first, a message from Paul Pocobera.
Thank you very much. Before I'm sorry for interrupting, but I just wanted to acknowledge that we have 2 Board of Supervisors in the room tonight in the back corner. They took some time out of their day. I wanted to present Dana Kane and Bernadette Hanna are part of the steering committee, and they're over in the back wall underneath everything. So I hope you don't mind me embarrassing you, but I wanted to let everybody know that we have the attention of the board on this project. It is very important to the board as well as to the community at large, so I just wanted you to know that.
And they've been great. They've been great partners for us already, and we are really happy to have them joining us tonight. So for the remainder of this meeting, we're going to break out into 3 groups. I want to encourage people to have more conversations with us. Derek will be leading one in the back, Bill will be leading one over here, and then I'll be leading a group over here. We have 4 questions we're going to be discussing tonight. We want to know which township or county park would you most like to access by bike or by walking, and can you access it that way now? We want to know what your generational project would be. What project that, if money were no issue and the pie in the sky vision for what parks could be here, we want to hear what that is, because even if we can't, we like to talk about this as the time that you can talk about that 50-foot water slide you'd like to have in the parks. And we might not be able to build a 50-foot water slide, but we might be able to encourage, make a splash pad and find ways to incorporate those same kinds of goals into the process with maybe a more realistic endpoint. But you got to start somewhere, and I think dreaming big is really the key to making a successful plan. We also want to hear from you what the top 3 township parks are that require facility capital improvements, like a playground replacement, or restrooms, or parking, or drainage, really those large-scale investments. And then we also want to hear what your assessment of programming is available to all members of the community. As I said, we'll have 3 groups breaking out here. When I break you up, go to the group that calls to you, whether that be the smallest group of people or the group of people that you don't know anyone in. We really want you to be able to hear your neighbors and have your neighbors hear you. For those that are participating online, there is an online breakout option that will be shared in the chat there with instructions for how to participate in that. And with that, I'm going to break you all up into the breakout sessions, and we all look forward to hearing more from you in these smaller groups.